I'm very pleased to say that there's something extremely rare that's happening in the studio this morning. I'm looking at a live human being opposite me at about 2 meters and 25 centimeters. So social distancing has been preserved. And that live human being is...
Ed Miliband.
Ed Miliband, former Labour leader, who didn't become Prime Minister.
Correct. That's a correct observation.
That is a correct observation. How are you with that? How are you with that? Have you ever come... Are you still bitter inside? Are you bitter and twisted?
I'm not bitter.
You don't seem like a bitter and twisted
chap. I'm not bitter and twisted. No, I'm sort of... I'll always be disappointed. Right. Although I sort of think, maybe we'll get onto this, I sort of probably think it was a good outcome for my family. Well, my sort of wife's career's taken off and my kids get to see me. So, it's sort of... I think losing was probably quite good from their point of view.
But is that enough compensation for ambitious politicians?
I'd have preferred to have won. I'd have preferred to be Prime Minister. Of course I would. Of course I would. But, I've written this book about ideas because I think you can make an impact in politics and in the way the country is run without necessarily being leader.
Okay, the book is called Go Big, How to Fix Our World. A very modest title. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just want to get your views on because we've been talking about it all morning. Government wants to cut the aid budget. Tory rebels, together with the Labour Party, will oppose it. They might defeat the government on this on Monday. Where do you stand on this?
Well, we shouldn't be cutting the aid budget. This is about the world's poorest people. We're in the year of COP26, the big climate summit. We are
G7 next week.
Yeah, we If two things together show that we are in this together as a world, it's coronavirus and the climate crisis. Because unless we help the poorest countries of the world to vaccinate their populations and tackle coronavirus, unless we help them to tackle climate change, we're all going to face consequences of that. So I think this is right in principle to help the world's poorest people. It's also about self-interest, this. It's our self-interest as a nation. So I think the Tory rebels are brave and they're right. I don't know exactly what will happen in the Commons on Monday, but I think it's the right cause.
And yet, as we keep saying, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record on this, there is plenty money that needs to be spent here at home, on schools, on education, on all sorts of, on poverty. Is it fair to say to constituents, I'm sorry, you're not going to have the money that you need for your kid at school, who's been learning badly at home for the last year and a half, but we'll spend that money on a school in the South Sudan?
We shouldn't be saying that. We can do both of those things.
But can we?
Well, yes, we can do both of those things. And, in a way, that sort of takes me a bit to the book because, I think back at the crises we've gone through in the past as a country. Think about the Second World War. No two crises are the same. What did that government do after 1945? It said, OK, we got big debts, but we're not going to lower our ambitions for our country. We're going to raise our ambitions. And it built a national health service. And actually, there was, it was a Labour government, but both parties were saying we need big change in our country. And I'm not comparing coronavirus to the war, but it has been an appalling 18 months, 15 months for our country. So many people have lost their lives. All of us have been affected. We owe it to ourselves to look at our country, the kids who need catch-up tuition, the public services that need investment, the key workers that need to be paid properly, and to think big. Why not? We made our institutions. Why can't we remake them? And that's what my book is about, basically.
Now, I look at you, and I look at your head of hair. Now, I used to particularly admire the fact that you had very good black hair, and in the middle of it was that signature grey sort of brush.
This is a big idea, Matt.
Yes.
Go on.
Okay, the grey has spread.
Yes.
You look greyer.
Yes.
Certainly in terms of your hair.
Yes. I mean, you're not doing so well.
You're not doing
so well yourself.
No.
Anyway.
But so you look a bit wiser.
All right.
Okay, so in your grey wisdom, what are the big ideas? Give me the three biggest ideas in this book that you've come up with.
I'd say the three biggest ideas are build social housing at scale to tackle the housing crisis, which we haven't done as a country for 40 years. Tackle the climate crisis, but recognise it's not just about avoiding disaster. It is about creating millions of jobs across our country, doing the work that needs to be done, insulating homes, cutting air pollution, creating a better world, not just avoiding that disaster. And it is also about rewriting the social contract of work and family, giving dads proper time off when their kids are born, giving mothers proper maternity leave as well. Because that isn't just good for kids. And by the way, a national childcare service alongside it, that isn't just good for kids. It's the best investment we can make in our economy. It will make for a happier country. They're just three of the ideas in the book.
Now, a lot of those ideas are ideas that actually many Tory MPs could get behind, and
Great.
and the Labour Party could get behind. Jeremy Corbyn would say, "Well, that's exactly what I've been going on about." You know, Keir Starmer would say the same thing. So where do your big ideas differ from the big ideas that are currently making the rounds in the House of Commons?
I think it's partly, and I've done this book. I'm the shadow business secretary, but I've done this book not as a front bencher. I started as a backbencher because I think there is an issue for our politics, which is, are we acting at the scale that is required? So take this issue of housing. Governments of both parties have failed to build social housing in the last 30 or 40 years at scale. And we talk about social housing in the thousands or the tens of thousands, but to solve the housing crisis, we need to build it in the hundreds of thousands a year, right? And governments, but both parties can say we want to build 300,000 homes. That's what this government says. We're not going to do it unless we change our view on social housing. Take this issue of the climate crisis. Unless we invest at a much bigger scale. Now, it's not just about investment. It's also about saying, okay, we've done things in a particular way in the past, but do we need to carry on doing them in the future? Take this issue of devolving power in our country. Are we really going to devolve power to regions, to cities, to towns, or are we going to just fiddle around the edges? So I think the reason I've written the book is because I feel like we used to think big as a country. I actually think Brexit is a big idea. I didn't support it, but I think it is a big idea.
Have you embraced it?
Yes, we've got to embrace it because, that argument's over. And we've got to build a post-Brexit future. But
Is it a big idea or is it a big opportunity?
Well, I didn't see it as an opportunity. I now see it as a necessity.
Right.
It's happened, and we've got to build the future. There's no point in sort of bleating on about it. We had the referendum, we had a general election that was a decisive result. But I think there's something, Matt, about our politics. And by the way, this is not me saying I was right in 2015. I think I wasn't bold enough in 2015 when I was the leader, which says, okay, there are some things we can't do anything that are just hard to tackle. We're always going to be an unequal country and there's just nothing we can do about it. That sort of inequality is just stuck in the system. Well, why should it be stuck in the system? Well, the climate crisis, well, yeah, it is a massive problem, but we can't do the action at the scale that's necessary. I'm saying we made our institutions and we can remake our institutions.
So in America, of course, President Biden has put tons of money behind the green economy.
Yeah.
We should be doing the same here.
Definitely.
So give us a practical idea and, amounts of money that should be thrown at particular sectors of the industry to turn them green and profitable.
Look, we've said, and this is with my shadow business secretary hat on, we said you need at least a 30 billion economic stimulus for the green economy. Now, what is that about? By the way, I think we could do it with my non-shadow business secretary hat on. We could definitely go significantly bigger than that. What is that about? That is about we should have a nationwide program of retrofit and home insulation to cut people's energy bills, create up to 200,000 jobs people say can be created if we do that. We've got to train the people. It's got to be a proper house-by-house, street-by-street operation. We can help create manufacturing jobs all around our country. There is a global race on in terms of who's going to build the electric cars of the future. We've got to make those cars affordable for people, not just the richest in our society. Our steel industry has got to be transformed. Now, you might look at this and think, this sounds sort of eye-watering, this sounds like a massive transformation. You're right. But my worry on the climate thing is this, which is we set the targets but don't do the action. Our targets are pretty good by international standards, to be fair to the government, right? We're sort of among the world's leading pack on the targets. But as I know from government, targets are all very well. It's actually delivering on it. And unless government puts its financial muscle behind it, we're not going to do it. But it's not just about money. This power issue, I want to just go to this power issue. I'm a local MP in Doncaster, as you know. Take the issue of bus services, one of the great, I think, underestimated issues of our time. Now, in London, actually, we have much better bus services than the rest of the country. But we're still in a position, I was talking to Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, about this the other day. We're still in a position where Andy Burnham can just about regulate the buses in a London-style way. But if Andy Burnham wanted to have municipal ownership of the buses, you know what? He can't do it by law. He's prevented from doing it because Westminster holds the power. Westminster says, and Matt, we are one of the most centralised countries in the whole of Europe, and we are also one of the most unequal countries.
So that's part of the devolution. Give more power to local government to spend more money on the things that they're responsible for.
Why not replace the House of Lords with a second chamber of the nations and regions? Representing Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and the English regions. I think when it comes to politics, we need big democratic change in our country because people have lost faith in our democracy. When it comes to the social contract, it needs renewing. And when it comes to markets, I think we haven't really learned the lessons of the financial crisis about deregulation and all of those things.
We're going to hopefully get some callers in a minute for you directly after the break. But just on the matter of party politics, the Labour Party did appallingly in the recent local elections and, of course, the by-election. And what you were up against was, the mayor of Teesside, a Tory, promising to spend tons of money on things like the local airport and delivering on those promises.
Well, if Tory mayors and Tory leaders want to say, we also care about levelling up, we also care about tackling inequality, great. But that's the fight of the next election. You see, I think we've been through, this terrible moment. Governments around the world have seen generally the public rallying to them. I'm not saying Labour doesn't face an uphill struggle. Absolutely, we do.
But how can you compete on spending when the Tories are shaking the magic money tree the way that Jeremy Corbyn couldn't have dreamt of doing?
Well, two things. One, during the pandemic, Rishi Sunak, not completely but rightly, has taken action. Good for him for doing it, right? But the question is, who is going to really invest for the future? You see this issue on catch-up tuition today. What did the Tsar say? 15 billion required. What did the government deliver? 1.4 billion. Let's see. It's not just about how much money you spend. That's the first point. The second point is this, which is it isn't just about money. It's what kind of economy are we going to deliver? You see, my worry is that the Tory view is we can still compete with a low-wage, zero-hours contract, insecure economy. Who is going to really regulate the gig economy to give proper rights to workers? Who is really going to get rid of these pernicious zero-hours contracts that have been around for ages and nobody has done anything about? Who is really going to give a voice to workers in the workplace? So I think the sort of fight is going to develop over the vision of the future. And let's make politics about who has that vision of the future.
Ed, good to have you here. When you look back at the defeat of Labour this year, just about a month ago or so, in constituencies not far from your own that had been Labour forever, right? What's going on?
Well, we saw it in 2019 as well. I mean, we saw it at the general election.
This is we part saw of a wave,
right? And by the way, just for the record, in Doncaster, we did rather well in the local elections.
Okay.
Look, I think
what's going on there? I mean, is the Labour Party still the party of the working class?
Absolutely, but lots of things are going on here. First of all, people's political preferences are much less sort of inherited than they were. People are much less willing to just vote a particular way. Secondly, I think sort of Brexit did divide the country and divided Labour from some of the people who had voted Labour in the past. I've mentioned that we're in the midst of the pandemic. But the challenge for us, in a sense, you can analyse the results all you like. The challenge for us as a party is set out, and I know this is what Keir is going to do, set out the vision of the future and then let people decide. We've had a government that's been in power.
But people are saying, what is your vision for the future? A lot of people are saying we have no idea what their vision is for the future. What is your vision for the future?
I mean, I've set out what I believe in this book, which is that I think our country is deeply unfair, deeply unequal. It's not a good way to run our economy, and that can and must change. We've got to rebuild our social contract so that everybody has a stake in our society. We can't just be governed by free markets. We've got to protect things like time with family. We've got to take on the technology giants that are quite monopolistic, causing us problems as a country. We've got to extend our democracy. I think there is a vision about the kind of country we can be. But, in the end, we've got to set out our vision of the country, and people will make their own decisions.
But is the problem not for the Labour Party that on the big cultural issues, whether it's patriotism or whether it's Brexit, the Labour Party has lost the narrative? You have yielded that narrative to people who might benefit from your economic programme, but in terms of the culture wars, if I can borrow a phrase from America, you're losing that one.
Well, look, I think it depends what you're talking about, because I think it's definitely the case that the 2017 and 2019 general elections were a big contrast. In the 2017 general election, Brexit was not the issue that Theresa May hoped it would be. In the 2019 general election, it was, and that was very much a disadvantage for Labour.
Do you think Jeremy Corbyn should have come out of the closet as a fully fledged Brexiteer? I mean,
I don't know about rewriting
rewriting
history. I think he was in a no-win situation. But look, the Remain Leave argument is settled in our country. That isn't the question of the next election. That won't be the question of the next election. The question of the next election will be, in my view, who can build something better? Who is going to learning the lessons of the pandemic is like a loose phrase, but what does it mean? It means saying we clap the key workers, but they're paid extremely badly. Are we going to do something about it? Our public services were ill prepared for the pandemic. Are we going to do something about that? Are we going to invest for the future in our public services? Lots of people who were working found that not only could they not work from home, but they had little power about how they were going to be safe in the workplace. Are we going to do something about that? Those are the big questions we face as a country. And also, I have a sort of great sense of optimism because I think, again, of the spirit that the British people showed in this pandemic. But our institutions don't match our spirit. The way we run our country doesn't match who we are as a country. And that's what's got to change. And then, maybe this is the benefit of hindsight losing an election. I don't know about the benefit, but the experience of losing an election, I just sort of think we've got to say what we think. What do we think about the country? Where does it go? And then people will decide. Let the chips fall where they may. In a sense, perhaps that's one of my biggest learnings. You just got to go out there, say what you think, and then people will make their decision.
Lots of comments coming in here on Twitter and text. Ricky on Twitter asks, when David Cameron, that we'd have chaos with Ed Miliband, does Ed look back and laugh considering, well, all the other stuff that's gone down since then?
Well, I sort of, obviously I wish I'd won the election. I mean, it is incredibly sort of ironic that he would have said that. And then, within a year or so, he'd be out as Prime Minister. Then because we had Brexit,
another election.
What has happened? That's why. But, I don't look in a kind of laugh because I sort of think, I wish it hadn't happened. I mean, obviously, I wish I'd won the election. But,
some people say, not wishing to be cruel, some people wish that your brother David had won the Labour Party election. History would have been different.
Some people do. The sliding doors
version.
Do
you ever regret standing up?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I don't, because I felt I had something to say that was important about the country and where it goes. And, I do think there's something interesting here, which is, where is political debate now? Not sort of where was it in 2015. Where is it now? It's different parties competing on this ground of saying there are things wrong with our economy. It started with Theresa May, actually, to be fair to her. She came into office, said the burning injustices.
Sure.
And
then she got sidetracked by Brexit.
Yeah, Johnson doesn't use the same language, but he is trying to speak to that agenda. That is interesting, I think. And some of the things that I said, by the way, that were controversial, when I said we should intervene in energy markets to cap energy prices, Cameron said it was a Marxist universe. Now it's government policy. That's why I think, in a way, the unpredictability of the last few years is partly why I think it's such a mug's game to say the next election is, in the bag for anyone.
Yeah, because we don't know what it's going to be like, and you could become a victim of your own success. You get everyone vaccinated, the economy is back up and running. People don't necessarily reward you for that. They might look for other things. So.
But also, what's the deep lessons of the last decade? The financial crisis, Brexit, what coronavirus has shown. Tells you something that the country needs to change, doesn't it? And I think both parties are sort of, if you like, grasping for what does the new settlement look like.
You sound very passionate. This is a very passionate book. It is about big ideas. But take me back to the months, the year after your defeat in 2015.
Thanks.
No, but that's but I'm fascinated because put yourself out there.
It was really rubbish. I won't use a four-letter word on LBC. It was really rubbish.
It was really rubbish.
Yeah, it was really rubbish. Losing an election is really rubbish.
There's a story in the Mirror today that you went into therapy afterwards. Is that right?
Well, I was actually...
No shame in therapy
I'd been actually in therapy much earlier, before I was leader, and then I went back to it.
Right.
Maybe I should have had it while I was leader. That was the mistake I made. Yeah. I mean, I'd recommend it for anyone. It's helpful, but I definitely needed it after 2015.
And it helped?
Yes, it did help. I mean, my family was the thing that helped the most, Justine and my boys. I was walking on the street with my son Sam the other day, and a lady said to me, and I promise you I'm not making this up, she said, I wish you were Prime Minister, mate. And then I had a chat with him, and he's 10, and we concluded that for him it was better I wasn't. Because the life of being the son of the Prime Minister is not great. But yeah, so therapy helped.
You dream of the bacon sandwich in the middle of the night?
The what, sorry?
The bacon sandwich?
I don't dream of it. I kind of joke about the bacon sandwich. I don't think I lost with the bacon sandwich. Do you know what I mean?
You know how absurd that phrase sounds in itself?
Well, indeed.
I'm sorry I brought it up, but
the
it
very
does sound
fact I've got
ridiculous.
to say that, I lost for deeper reasons than that. And in a way, I shouldn't sort of console myself by thinking, it's just because I ate the sandwich.
For your brother, it was a banana, wasn't it? For you, it was a bacon sandwich. So what is it with the Miliband brothers and food?
Well, don't eat. I mean, I do say don't eat on camera. I mean, that is to anyone listening. Don't eat. I am the paradigm lesson. Don't eat on camera. Don't you think?
You're absolutely right.
Thank you.
I think that's good. That is not a very big idea, but it is an idea.
Well, it's definitely correct. It's definitely a correct idea.
You heard it from Ed Miliband. Yeah. Don't eat on camera.
Particularly not a bacon sandwich.
Exactly.
Think of if it had been an egg sandwich, it would have been worse.
Okay. All right. Someone here, Gemma says, usually a Tory voter. I'm a huge fan of Ed's reason to be cheerful. Completely changed my view of Ed. I like his ideas. Ed for PM, which stands for Prime Minister. My God.
Very nice, Gemma.
Not a family member either.
Yeah, I was going to say Gemma's my cousin.